Morning, guys. I am just getting ready to get started here. Can anybody please, if I stop mid-sentence, it's not only because I might be losing my train of thought here, but students drop into the waiting room all the time, and so I have to manually allow the students to enter the meeting. And so oftentimes what happens is I just get a little window box up on my screen that says so-and-so or a student has entered the waiting room. So I stop my sentence and allow them, I admit them into the meeting. So if I'm talking and I all of a sudden stop and I look up at my screen, it's because I'm admitting another student. If somebody could please unmute their microphone and just let me know that you can hear me. That's always a good thing the first day. Hi. So you can hear me. All right, great. Thank you. So I'm going to just start. What I'm going to start with today is just a total introduction to how the course is going to run. These meetings, by the way, will automatically be recorded. So here's the deal with that. I will try my best to post the recordings to these meetings probably within 24 hours after they happen. It's my opinion that it's always best that if you can make these meetings great, that's always best because you not only hear the information first. Yeah, we checked sound. Most people can hear me. So anyway, when I tell students that I record these meetings and post them, a lot of times that encourages them not to attend. And I get it. Life gets in the way, or if you can't make a meeting, it's no big deal. These meetings are not required. No, I don't take attendance at them. So it's not the end of the world if you cannot attend. I'm just letting another student in here. But if you can attend, even better, because then you can actually ask me questions in real time. You can get the answer in real time. So that's always best. And I will, as I think I stated in the course outline, I will be holding these Zoom meetings every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 a.m. I will record them. I will try my best to get the recordings posted to Canvas as soon as possible. It usually happens within 24 hours. So quickly, I'm going to go through how the course is going to be run throughout the semester. Most of it is explained in the course outline. Some of it isn't. So required materials, let's talk about that first. So it's always easier to understand in person or when you hear somebody say it than it is to write all of this business out. Basically, you need two things. You need a textbook and lab manual access. The textbook is by the publisher Pearson. The author is Marie Ben-Hone. The 11th edition is the most recent. You will use the same textbook for A&P 1 and A&P 2 if you take A&P 2 at Camden County College. We do the first half of that book in A&P 1, and then we do the second half in A&P 2. Whether or not you get a hard copy or a digital ebook, I really don't care. There's advantages and disadvantages to both, or to each one. If you have the hard copy, great. You can take it wherever you need it. You can have it under your arm. In other words, if you need to go somewhere for the weekend and you have some reading to do, or yada, 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 or you don't have Wi-Fi in a particular area, you can just open up a book and read it. That's great. If you have the ebook version, if you guys have a question while I'm talking, just unmute your microphone and go ahead and fire away. I don't mind at all.
I was just wondering, I have a textbook that's about 10 years old. It's from the same publisher. It's the same anatomy book.
Okay.
Will that suffice as a reference?
Depends on it depends on what 10 years old, like what the, I'm just admitting a student here. It depends on what the edition is and how much it's changed. So That's a gray area. Is this Layla I'm talking to?
Yes.
Okay, Layla. So I'm going to be lecturing from the 11th edition. The majority probably of what you have is the same. Some diagrams and figures are probably different, and there might be a few new topics. Certainly not much has changed since the 10th edition, or even maybe the 9th. If you're all the way back to like the 5th edition, you might not have it all. I'm not going to tell you you can't use that book. I get it. If it's really cheap or it was free or whatever, you can go ahead and try. I'll talk about my tests and how I make up the tests from the book in my lectures in a few minutes. So I can't tell you, no, you can't use that book. But I am going to tell you, I'll be upfront with you and tell you there might be some topics that a few topics that aren't covered. Generally, it's all the same. That's the best answer I can give you. So if you have the hard copy, that's fine. That's okay. If you bought the e-version, the digital version from the publisher, that's great too. I've posted the course ID from Pearson. What I do is, sometimes it's difficult for me to understand all of the parameters of what you guys face when you buy these electronic things, because I'm not a student. I don't go through the same steps that you do. To the best of my knowledge, here's how the textbook works. I have already created a course in the Pearson Publisher website. So you can get, with your code, with the e-textbook code that you purchased, you can get to it, I think, either by going directly to the publisher, or you should be able to get to it from our website, our Canvas page. If you are having trouble accessing the textbook from the Canvas page, let me know and I'll try to work it out. A lot of times what I do is I ask other students, how are you accessing the textbook from? Because I don't have to do that. I don't have to access the same things that you do from the Canvas site. So a lot of this, figuring out how the computer / interface / internet / Canvas stuff works, is me talking with you and finding out what you have to go through versus what I have to go through. Up until last March, I taught completely in person. I never taught these online courses before last March. So I'm not an expert at the hardware and the interface and all that. Plus it changes. I taught a couple online A&P courses this past summer. And then in the fall, the publishers changed the procedures, and I was telling my students one thing, and it can turn out to be difficult. So that's the textbook. Now there's a thing in Pearson, if you purchased the ebook, the e-textbook, the digital version, whatever you want to call it, Pearson provides all sorts of materials with that purchase. One of the things that they provide is a program called Connect, C-O-N-N-E-C-T. Those are basically exercises, excuse me, those are basically exercises that students can do, either assigned or unassigned, to enhance their learning. Some instructors, professors assign Connect problems. There's advantages and disadvantages to that as well. I do not assign Connect problems for homework. Doesn't mean you can't go in. You should be reading the textbook anyway. You're paying a lot of money, or you went to a lot of work to obtain this textbook. You have to use it. You have to read it anyway. A lot of students, they do those Connect problems just to check to make sure that they understand it. That's always a great thing to do, but it's not required. Now, if you don't take me for A&P 2 and you get somebody else, you'll still use the same textbook, but that instructor may assign Connect problems. I don't. I just wanted to be upfront and let you know that. The reason is because we have this whole other publisher to deal with our lab assignments. And that's going to be, believe me, that's going to be enough work for you. If I assigned Connect problems on top of that, you'd be losing your mind. You wouldn't be able to do anything else in your life. Believe me, it's going to be enough information as is. So that's the textbook. Now the lab book, I put that in quotations. It's not really a book, it's just an access code. That's by the publisher Wiley. Wiley is the name of the publisher. Pearson is the textbook publisher. Wiley puts out a program or sells a program, access to it, called NextGen, Nexgen. That is basically what it is a digital lab manual with lots of exercises to do. I do assign Wiley NextGen lab exercises. To the best of my knowledge, and the reason I say to the best of my knowledge is A, I'm not a student and I don't have to go through the same steps you do, and B, it changes almost every semester. But to the best of my knowledge, this is how you can obtain Wiley NextGen access codes. You can either A, purchase it from the Camden County College bookstore, and at least at the beginning of last fall semester, when you did that, they would send you in snail mail, in the real physical mail, they would send you an access code. Then what you would do is you would take that access code that they sent you, that you purchased, you'd go onto our Canvas site, you would click on the first exercise that I assigned in Wiley, it's right in the module, and you would be prompted to enter that code. When you entered that code, then you should be good to go for the whole semester. You don't have to enter the code every time you do the next exercise and the next one and so on. You only have to enter that once. If you purchase the Wiley NextGen access code from the publisher, it's a little bit trickier, or I should say more confusing, at least as of last semester it was. If you purchase that access code directly from going on the internet and getting it from Wiley, you obtain an access code. Then what I think they'll do is they'll prompt you to enter your course. You don't want to do that. You don't want to try to enter the Wiley lab exercises directly from the Wiley publishing website, okay? You always have to enter our lab exercises from our Camden County Canvas page. So there seems to be, at least there has been in the past, the last couple semesters, a lot of confusion about that with students. Oftentimes, and I'm not saying that I'm not complaining that students email me. I'm just saying that oftentimes I get emails from students saying, I can't access Wiley, I can't access Wiley. And I say, did you purchase the code? They say, yes. And they say, it's prompting me to enter a course number, and I don't see your name on the list of instructors. That means you're in the Wiley website. If you purchase an access code from Wiley, no matter how you get it, in order to do our exercises that I assign, you need to access each exercise from our Canvas module. That's the key difference. The reason, here I'll explain to you how Wiley works. I load a Wiley cartridge from my home computer that Wiley supplied to me onto our Canvas page. And it's got 1 million exercises in it, way more than we could possibly do, a human being could do in one semester. Then what I do every week is I sift through those exercises and I pull them out of the huge bank and I attach them to the module, the ones that I select, only the ones for you to do. I pull those out of the bank and put them on the Canvas module. And then you're only responsible to obviously complete the ones that I assign. That's how I assign them. So that's why it makes sense, and that's why it only works if you need to click on the particular exercise from the Canvas module in order to access it. It will prompt you to enter a code. Once you do that, I don't think you ever have to do that again if you access the exercises from Canvas. So it should all be linked properly, and it should work that way. All right, I think I've covered the material. That's all you need for this course, just admitting a student here. If you go to the Camden County College bookstore page for this course, there's a bunch of other materials. I'm not saying those are bad. If you already purchased them, they will help you, but I will not. They're not required. things like there are photo atlases of anatomy. That's good, particularly when we do the skeletal system, but none of the other things are required. Only the textbook and the Wiley Next Gen Access are the two required materials. So I've already talked about the Zoom meetings. I'll hold these Zoom meetings every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 a.m. It's best if you can make it. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. I will try to post a recording of that meeting on the Canvas page. And what I will do is I will post those recordings in the module, directly in the module of the week that we are on. So for example, this is week 1. For the students who don't show up to this recording today, or if you want to re-watch this recording ever again in the future, I will take this recording and post it right in the module. And what it will say is A&P lecture recording or something like that, A&P lecture 1 recording. And all you have to do is click on it and this recording will open up. So you guys know how to do Zoom. I'm looking at the course outline right now and make sure I cover everything. Since you guys are here, you know how to access Zoom. You've gotten the app on your device. You're welcome to record this. It's not necessary because if you record this meeting on your device, it will take up space, usually quite a bit of space on your device. You can, if you want, just ask me at the beginning of a meeting if you want to record. I have the ability to click enable recording on your device only if your device can record. Phones usually don't. If you're on an iPhone or an Android phone, you don't have that option to record. But if you're on a computer or perhaps an iPad, you might be able to record this meeting. All right, organ systems covered in this course. I'm not going to read that because you can read that yourself. Now, grades. I know students, the biggest thing they care about is their grade. I get that. I've been teaching this for a long time. The grade is simple. I didn't say easy, I said simple. There's just a lecture grade and a lab grade. And the biology department at Camden County College dictates, I don't make this up, that 70% of your final grade is from lecture, 30% is from lab. So lab in the online world consists of you doing lab exercises. That's going to be 30% of your grade. Then we will also take lecture quizzes. And those lecture quizzes, the first one starts Monday, February 1st, and then every other Monday throughout the semester, we take a lab quiz. I designed that after teaching my first online course back in March when we were all forced to go online. I designed a quiz every other week format rather than doing like 3 giant exams because I think it actually helps the students. There's so much material in these upper level biology classes that it's really difficult to take a long drawn out online exam after doing like a month or 6 weeks of material. So what I do is I just quiz you every 2 weeks on what we've done since the previous quiz. So it's the quizzes are never cumulative. They always just cover the material since the previous quiz. I'll say something about the quizzes. You'll access a quiz on our Canvas page. I'll post it usually a day or 2 before the quiz. You can only open it up starting at 12 p.m. That's 12 noon on that particular Monday. It's open then for 12 hours, actually 1 minute short of 12 hours. So the quizzes will open at 12 noon every other Monday. They will close at 11:59 p.m. that same day. So you have basically 12 hours in which you sit down and take that quiz. Quizzes are fairly short. They shouldn't take you, they should take you 35 to 45 minutes, depending on how many questions there are. I'm going to tell you right now, if you are unprepared, and the quiz questions are all multiple choice and true false. If you are unprepared to take those quizzes, you're not going to do well. You never do. Nobody does if they're not prepared to take it, some sort of assessment. But particularly in the online world, a lot of students think, well, I really don't have to be prepared for this. I can just sit there with my textbook in my lap or whatever and look up all the answers. Most students find that they struggle when they do that because you don't have enough time to look up all of these answers. It's just not possible. Students who attend the meetings, read the textbook, do whatever they need to do to study for the test. That might mean taking some notes from the textbook, asking me questions. Those are all sort of necessary ingredients in which to succeed. Then when they sit down and take these quizzes, I'm not naive enough to believe that all students sit down and nobody opens up a textbook or tries to look up an answer. I'm just not that naive. However, students who have to look up many questions or the majority of questions or all of the questions, that usually is a recipe for disaster because it just takes too long, it takes too much time, and you get to the end of the time limit and you're out of time. So the better prepared you are for a quiz, the more time you'll have. I'm going to give you an example. And this will take me about 60 seconds in which to give this explanation. Research says, and this is true, people actually do research on test taking. Research states that it takes the average person about 15 to 20 seconds to answer, to really answer a 4-answer multiple choice question. And it's broken down. It takes them roughly 5 to 6 seconds to read the question, another few seconds, the human brain, to process the question. So now we're up to what, 9 seconds? And then it takes another 6 to 7 questions to read through those 4 choices, think about it, and then answer. So we're up to maybe 20 seconds now to take a multiple choice question, if you're prepared. What happens when students feel like they need to look up all the answers is they read the question, they think about it, they get up to about 15, 20 seconds, they're nervous, they're anxious because they have to look it up. Then they start looking it up and time flies by. Don't worry, I don't give you 20 seconds to answer a question. I typically give almost a full minute to answer a question. That's 3 times what research says the average person needs to answer a question if they're prepared. Now, you sit down and you take one of these quizzes, if you are prepared, it may take you 20 seconds. And let's just say you're nervous, so it takes you 25 seconds to answer questions that you are prepared for. When you answer questions on these quizzes in less time than I have given you to answer them, you bank time. So in other words, me, the instructor, I give you 60 seconds to answer a question. If it takes you 20 or 25, you're banking that extra 40 seconds to save at the end of the quiz, in which you need more time for certain questions that you're unsure about. You don't get kicked off of a question after 60 seconds. That time is averaged over the whole quiz. So a 40 question quiz, you get 40 minutes to take it. If it only takes you 20 seconds to answer questions that you are really prepared about, you've banked extra time at the end of the quiz for questions that you need more time with. So it all works out well if you're prepared. Most of my students, occasionally I get students who say, I don't have time, you're not giving me enough time to take the quiz. And almost 1,000% of the time, that student, the reason that they're rushed for time is that they are just simply not prepared and they're trying to look up all the answers. So that's my soapbox lecture about quizzes. I'm trying to think, I'm pausing to think if there's anything else. And the true false questions, by the way, take you even less time than the multiple choice questions, because you just read the question and you have time, a full minute, to think about whether or not it's true or false. So it sounds, to students, it sounds like I only have a minute to answer this question. It really only takes your brain about 15 to 20 seconds if you're prepared to answer that question. Now, test anxiety, I get it. I'm not trying to sound critical of students who say I have test anxiety. I do too. Almost every human being on the planet, when they sit down to take a test or an assessment, doesn't matter if it's a driver's test or anything, they get anxious, myself included. I had to take something called the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination, prior to entering graduate school, after undergraduate school. And I was anxious. I didn't know what they were going to ask. It was a time test, all that stuff. Test anxiety is a normal reaction to a test. So, but the more prepared you are, the less anxious you will be, especially once the test starts. The less prepared you are, the more anxiety you will have. So just keep in mind that I do understand test anxiety exists. Everybody has it. Everybody has experienced it. But most people experience the highest levels of anxiety when they are not prepared. All right, we've done grades, grade weighting. At the end of the semester, what happens with grades is you'll know what your grade is at all times during the semester because Canvas updates your grades in real time. Quizzes may not be reopened or retaken. So here's the deal. You cannot open a quiz and then ask me to reopen that quiz at a later time. Why? Because it physically can't be done. Once you open that quiz, it cannot be reopened or retaken. There's no way humanly possible for me to open a quiz, even from where you, quote, left off. Canvas doesn't allow that. It's not possible. They cannot be retaken as well. So once that quiz is open, I'm not trying to make you nervous. I'm trying to tell you that if you get 5 or 10 questions into a quiz and you're like, oh, geez, I'm really not prepared for this, I'm just going to back out, close out, and ask him if I can have a retake. It's just not possible. It is possible, but it's not helpful for your grade. It is possible for me to give you a makeup quiz. I highly recommend that you don't do that, and I'll tell you why, but it is possible. So let me say this. If you have a legitimate, and it has to be legitimate, you know how many, I also teach at Rowan University every semester. And so I have tons of students, of anatomy students. And every semester I get students who say, my computer broke down, I don't have Wi-Fi. I mean, I've heard it all. And I'm not saying that they're not telling me the truth. I'm just saying I get a whole barrage of reasons why students didn't take a test or can't take a test, yada, yada, yada. So I am contracted, required, and it's the correct thing for me to do to treat all students the same and hold them to the same bar, the same standard. In other words, I can't allow one student to make up 4 tests and other students, they sit down and take the test every time on the test date. That's just not fair. So my policy is this. If you have a legitimate excuse to make up, to do a makeup, I'm going to require you to prove that happened. I'm also going to require you to let me know on test day, or before would be even better. You can't email me 3 days after the quiz and say, oh, I was sick, so I couldn't take the quiz. That just doesn't cut it. I get it. Life happens. I'm not unreasonable. And I live life too. So I know that there are times when an emergency happens, but it has to be a true emergency. I'm going to require documentation of that emergency. And here's the deal. You're allowed 1 makeup quiz for the whole semester. I used to do more than that, and it turns into a nightmare. Believe it or not, some students would take 2 out of the 7 quizzes. I used to give big exams, like 4 big major exams through the semester when I teach in person. Some students would skip 3 of those 4 exams and then expect a makeup on the last day of class. And then that just ruined my life. And usually the student didn't do well anyway, who can take 3 exams in 1 day. So just in case there's a true emergency, you're allowed one makeup quiz for the whole semester, and you have to take that makeup on the last day of the course. The reason for that is that's when I will have time to make up a makeup test. You're not going to take the same quiz that the other students have. So I have to create a whole new quiz just for that individual. And then I will post it electronically. You'll do the makeup. It's the last day of class. The other students will have finished their last quiz the day before. And so this is all in the course outline. And then that's it. The course is over because I'm contracted to have grades submitted to WebAdvisor within 48 hours. So that's how quizzes all work. All of the quiz dates are posted in the course outline. They're every other Monday, starting with February 1st. Now, the first quiz is going to be a short one because this week is a short week. So the first quiz is only going to cover, I believe, chapters 1 and chapter 4 in the textbook. We're skipping 2 and 3 because you did all that when you did Bio 1, and you shouldn't be in this class if you didn't take Bio 1. So I'm not going to rehash Bio 1. We are going to have a short quiz February 1st over chapters 1 and chapters 4, which is tissues. All right, so if you have any questions, I don't mind if you just pipe in. As far as makeup lab business, there's a due date. This is how I assign those Wiley lab exercises. Those are not timed. You'll click on an exercise. You'll see these little blue coded tiles will pop up. That just represents the question numbers. You click on question number 1, the question will pop up. You have as much time as you want to answer that question. They're all multiple choice or true, false. You don't have to write anything. You select the correct answer. I'm pausing because there may be a couple exercises when we do the skeletal system in which you write the name of a bone. You just type it out. But other than that, those lab exercises, I believe, are all objective. That means multiple choice or true, false. And so basically what you need to do is you'll have access to a lab manual in that Wiley program. You can just find the topic, find the answers, and then select the correct answer. It's basically homework. And I try my best to assign Wiley assignments that are relevant to what we are doing in lecture as well, obviously. So then that will help you understand the material as a whole, and hopefully it will help you on lecture quiz day as well. So those exercises are not timed. I've never taken one of those exercises as a student. I mean, I have gone through all of the questions, and obviously I know all of this stuff, so I just say, yep, this is appropriate for what I'm teaching, and I make that assignment. I can't guarantee this, but I've heard my students in the past say that they have gone into a Wiley lab exercise. Let's just say there's 30 questions to do. They've done 10 or 15 of those questions. They've backed out, and they have finished that particular exercise at a later time. I can't guarantee that works, but I have had students say to me that they've been able to do that. I would recommend trying to at least complete. So I'm gonna assign you several exercises per week from Wiley. I'll post them on the Canvas module. I would recommend, you don't have to complete all of the exercises in one sitting, but I would recommend trying to complete at least the current exercise before you back out. That way it guarantees you that you can always get into a different exercise, even that same week, if you complete the previous one. I know that for a fact. I've had some students say they have trouble getting back into a partially completed exercise. I've had other students say, no problem, I could get back into it. So that's just my explanation about the Wiley exercises. Once you complete that exercise, your score will just spit out to you, and it will go right into your grade book. You have unlimited time to take those, but there's a due date. So the due date is posted. I posted the first 2 lab exercises already in module 1. They are due February 1st, the same day as the first quiz. You can complete them whenever you want. You can complete them today if you want, just get them over with. I will also post a couple more exercises next week, and those will also be due on February 1st. So every week I assign Wiley Lab exercises that cover the topics that we are talking about in lecture. That reminds me, so in general, I post usually on a Sunday an outline and a new module for the coming week. So modules will keep opening I shoot for every Sunday. Occasionally something happens in my life where I can't get it out on Sunday. And so at the latest, it'll come out every Monday, which is no big deal because you'll be taking a quiz every other Monday, so you won't care what's coming up next week. And your lab assignments are due that day as well. But I try to get it out the day before. I try to get it out the Sunday of the upcoming week. What's included in that new module every week is an outline, meaning just a map or a schedule of what we have coming up that week. The Wiley Lab exercises for that particular week, and if there's any quizzes coming up. So I'll try to warn you every week, even if it's a week in advance. Don't forget you have a quiz coming up on this next coming Monday, yada, yada, yada. It covers these chapters in the textbook. So every week, I will open a new module for that week. You'll know exactly what you have to do. You have the dates for the whole semester of when the quizzes are. They're in the overall course outline. You also have a weekly schedule of course organization. So for example, I have written in course organization week 1, chapter 1. And I'm going to try to talk about that a little bit today before we end. I try to keep these Zoom meetings an hour and 15 minutes. Today's might run a little bit longer because I have all of this introduction nonsense to cover. So I will talk about a little bit about chapter 1. I'm almost through the course outline. So you have already, you know what dates quizzes are for the whole semester. And you also know what we are doing in the textbook every week. It's posted in that outline. But in addition to that, every week I will open up a new module for that week with the nitty-gritty specifics of everything that's going to happen that week. So the last thing I'm going to say before I cover a few things about chapter 1 is this. First, the course is finished on May 4th. The reason I'm finishing the course a couple days earlier than it says on WebAdvisor is because I'm teaching 2 sections of human A&P at Camden County College. I'm teaching a section of comparative vertebrate anatomy at Rowan University. And I'm also teaching a section of human anatomy and physiology at Rowan University as well. And everything always ends on the same week in all these places. And I'm contracted to turn everybody's grades in by a certain date. So it gets really difficult for me at the end of the semester. It's okay. We'll get through the material. I wrote a section in the course outline that says succeeding in an online course. So I'm going to say about 1 minute's worth of advice on that. Once you get the materials, you should have them by now. If you don't, please get them ASAP. We're just admitting another student. Once you get the materials, the key is to use them and to set the number one key ingredient for success is to set yourself a schedule and stick to it. I used to say this at the end of the semester to all my students, and then I figured out it's much more helpful if I say this the first day than the last day. Succeeding at anything, I'm just going to talk about college courses, is about making choices, really. It's all it is. We're human beings. All our life is making choices every minute, every second of every day. Do I get up? Do I stay in bed? Do I put on this shirt or that shirt? Do I take a shower or do I skip the shower? Do I turn right or do I turn left? Do I eat this or do I eat that? Your life and my life is filled with nothing but choices. Success, long-term success, is about making daily choices based on your long-term goals. So what I recommend you do is decide today, right now, what it is you want to finish with in this course and any course, and then make the right daily choices to meet that goal. Now, nobody makes all the right choices in life, including me. But people who try to make the right small incremental choices that get them to their long-term goals usually meet those goals. And if you miss that goal, you're not going to be very far off. So I know everybody wants an A. Every student wants to get an A. That's great. I was a student once too. I wanted an A in all my classes too. What I learned when I was a student is if I spent my daily time making it, rather than saying, oh, I'm going to go shopping, I'm going to go out and party with my friends, yada, yada, yada. Or if I have it, make the choice to do what needs to get done first, then go out and party with your friends, then go out and go shopping or do whatever it is you want to do, go out and socialize. If you make those daily choices, you will finish really successfully. This course and most college courses are not beyond, they're just not beyond the mental grasp of what you have in here. It's what you choose to do with your time that makes the difference. I say this to students every semester. I have students every semester finish way up here every semester. And I have students finish way down here, and I have students between those two extremes. The difference between this student and this student is not the textbook. They have the same textbook. It's not the lab manual. They have the same lab manual. Believe it or not, it's not the teacher. They had the same teacher. They heard the same things if they showed up. It's not the tests. It's not the exams. Everybody took the same test, the same exam. The difference between this and this is what these people chose to do with their time on a daily basis and what these people chose to do with their time on a daily basis. That's pretty much it. I believe that to be true. It's not mental capacity. Everybody can do it. It's just, it's a lot of material. So it's those who choose, make that a major priority on a daily basis. I'm not saying you have to spend 2 hours, 7 days a week on this. You don't. What I'm saying is every day that you get out of bed, think to yourself, do I need to do something before I go do something else? The answer is usually yes. All right, that's enough of that. Now I'm going to quickly get you introduced to how obviously I'm done with my introductory talk. So what follows for the rest of this, it's almost 9:15. So for the next 20 or so minutes, I'm going to walk you through chapter 1 in the textbook. And this is how most of the Zoom meetings are going to run from this point on. So I just got a question about the Wiley Lab Manual. It's not an actual physical book. The Wiley Lab Manual is an access code that you purchase. And so you can purchase that Wiley access code through my first advice is get it through the Camden County College bookstore, because it seems to work more seamlessly with Canvas if you do it that way. So if you choose to get it through the Camden County bookstore, just go to the bookstore webpage, order the Wiley manual. It's online. They'll send you a code in the mail. Then when you click on a Wiley exercise that I've assigned on Canvas, you'll be prompted to enter that code and you're good to go for the rest of the semester. If you purchase the Wiley code through the Wiley website or even through a Wiley link on our Canvas page, what it does is it takes you to the website, you purchase it directly from them. That should still work, but the caveat is this: you have to then back out of the Wiley website. What I would do is write down that code that you purchased, back out of the Wiley website, then go into our Canvas page, click on an exercise and enter that code. I might ask you guys for help. If students are having trouble with the Wiley business, what I often do is I send an announcement or an email out to the whole class and I say, one or two students are having trouble with their Wiley access. What did you guys do to solve that problem? Because I'm not a student. I don't have to go through all of these steps that you do. So oftentimes I just simply ask students, what did you do to make it successful? And then we share that response with the whole class. All right, so I'm going to go to chapter 1. What I do on these Zoom meetings is I have a whiteboard. So I don't know if you can see this. I have this plastic pen on my iPad, and I call up a whiteboard and I use that to draw. So what I do is I click, it's called share screen. I click a whiteboard and you should still be able to hear me. And what we do now is I can draw with this pen all over the board. So I'm just going to write chapter 1. And the reason I usually don't write this poorly, by the way, the reason that my penmanship is kind of sloppy on this is I'm using a plastic pen writing on a glass surface, and it's very slippery and not easy to do. And my surface is vertical right now. So I do want you to spend some time reading about the definitions of anatomy and the definitions of physiology. I'm just writing these words. So this is all in the textbook. I actually have my hard copy textbook right in front of me. I'm just going to flip through the pages and tell you what I think is most important about these chapters. Anatomy just means structure, the study of structure. What is it? I always tell students, anatomy is what is it? Physiology is what does it do? That's function. Usually, structure dictates function. So what the anatomy is typically dictates how it works. That makes sense. Then I want you to quickly review the topics of anatomy and topics of physiology, what that really means in this. I'm looking at the header, it says topics of anatomy. They just talk about the subcategories of anatomy. And those are things like gross anatomy, which just means what we can see with the naked eye. Microanatomy is if we need a microscope in order to do it. Regional anatomy means just a specific part of the body, not necessarily a specific organ, but a part. Like if you're going to go into the dental profession, typically those students take a course in what's called head and neck anatomy and physiology. That would be regional anatomy. Then there's systemic anatomy. Systemic anatomy is really how we study anatomy in this course, organ system by organ system. So after we do this introductory business and we study tissues, after that, for all of A&P 1 and A&P 2, you'll study the human body organ system by system. Surface anatomy just means just what it says, what's on the body surface. I already talked about microscopic anatomy. Cytology means the study of cells. Histology means the study of tissues. Developmental anatomy, just like it says, that's embryology. That's usually the development of the organism, in this case, the human. So developmental anatomy would study the human from the time that human being is conceived in utero all the way up through the whole life of the human being. So we continue to develop, as you know, when we're children, adolescents, teenagers, even as adults, our organ systems change and our body systems change and our anatomy changes. Topics of physiology are usually organ system subdivisions, things like neurophysiology, cardiovascular physiology. Those are just the names of specific systems. Complementary of structure and function just talks about that structure usually dictates what it does function. Now I'm going to briefly talk about body organization, which is, I think, section 1.2 or something. So I'm just going to write the word organization. This just means how is an organism, and we're always talking about humans in this course, how is the human being organized from a microscopic level up through the entire organism? And it basically just goes like this. Chemical, that means studying things like molecules and atoms and molecules. And then these actually chemicals, so I'm going to write atoms. This is the smallest level, the first level. atoms make up molecules, then molecules actually make up what we call organelles, which are these little structures within cells. You should have learned this in Bio 1. And then there's the cellular level, because all of these things make up cells, and then cells group together to make up tissues. Tissues group together to make up organs. Organs group together to make up organ systems. And then when we look at all the organ systems in an organism, that makes up the entire organism. So this would be the entire human being. So those are the levels of organization. The next section just says necessary life functions. So I'm just going to highlight those. I don't like to waste whiteboard space. So I'm going to move over to here and just write. This is all Bio 1 stuff too. You should have covered this, whoever you had for Bio 1. This should be repeat. So necessary life requirements or functions. I'm writing the word boundaries. Maintaining boundaries just enables a particular living thing, an organism, to separate itself from the external world, from the environment. We have physical boundaries in the form of usually our integument, our skin. Living things also exhibit some sort of movement. Now, when you look at that word, think both external and internal. So we move around in our external environment through muscles pulling on bones, but we also have a lot of internal movement going on as well from organ systems. For example, blood pumping through our arteries and veins. The word responsiveness, that means all living things have the ability to respond to their external and internal environment. So, for example, you walk outside on a day like today and you're in a t-shirt and shorts, your nervous system senses it's really cold and you start to shiver. That's your body responding to the external environment. By the way, shivering is just a way of producing body heat. But we also can respond to things in our internal environment as well. Food enters your stomach and your stomach starts to secrete acids and starts to churn muscularly in order to digest that food. That's your organ responding to the appearance of food. Next on the heading is the word digestion. Most all living things ingest some sort of nutrition and then have to break that nutrition down. That's what digestion means. And then they usually absorb those nutrients. Metabolism, we've all heard this word a lot. Metabolism basically just means the chemical functions that are going on within an organism. So when we say my metabolism, your metabolism, or I have a fast metabolism, that word literally means chemical reactions. But we also will speak about things like cellular metabolism, not just organismal metabolism. So metabolism can go on within an individual cell as well. Most all living things excrete something, usually waste products that they ingested, that they can't use. So for us, it's fecal matter. We excrete, but we also excrete when we sweat. We're excreting fluid, secreting and excreting fluid as well. This word, the difference between secretion and excretion. Excretion literally means getting rid of something, some sort of waste product that we don't need. So in humans, excretion, we usually think of urination as well as feces. Reproduction, all living things have to reproduce somehow, some way in order to continue to exist. There's all different forms of reproduction. Plants reproduce as well, through seeds, germination of seeds somehow, some way. All animals have to reproduce in order to continue to exist species-wise. And finally, growth. All living things go through some sort of form of growth. For us, it's from the time that we are conceived till the time that we die. Hopefully that's a very long time. All living things experience some sort of growth as well. So I want you to be familiar with those terms. Now I'm going to call up a new whiteboard and go on to organ systems. I want you to know the 11 organ systems in the human body and the major organs that are within them. If I write out all 11 systems and list by hand with my pen all of the major organs in them, we would be here for a very long time. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is refer you to the diagrams in your textbook. I'll go through them verbally right now. So what your book does is they list 12 systems, and the reason is because they split the male and female reproductive systems. Usually when I lecture, both in lectures and in laboratory sessions, I just say reproductive system, and that includes both male and female. That's why I say 11, and your book lists 12. Anyway, integumentary system. So that means the covering of the human body. That includes skin, hair, nails, and glands. The skeletal system is mostly bones and cartilage, but blood cells are also formed within the skeletal system. So when you review these 11 systems, let me just write this down. Think of this. Try to think or list of major organs and major functions. So let me go back to integumentary system. That's the skin, hair, nails, and glands. The major functions of the integumentary system is protection. There's a long list of functions, believe it or not, that our skin does, from fighting bacteria to temperature control, all sorts of things. But the major function of our skin is protection in multiple ways. The skeletal system is made up of bones and cartilage. Its major functions are structure, protection, and movement, because muscles pull on the bones to provide movement. Structure gives us structure so we're not just a blob of soft tissue. Protection, think your skull and your rib cage. But for the skeletal system, think also this is where I'm just pausing because I have to admit a student. This is where blood cells in the human body are created, are synthesized. Let's move on to the next one, muscular system. The major organs are skeletal muscles and smooth muscle. I'm not going to include cardiac muscle because that's really in the cardiovascular system. So the muscular system is mostly skeletal muscles. That's the stuff attached to our bones. Smooth muscle is what lines our organs. Major function of our skeletal system is movement. Also some production of body heat, but mostly movement. The lymphatic system. Major organ players are the spleen, the lymph nodes, the thymus gland in the chest, lymph vessels. Major function of the lymphatic system is defends the body against microorganisms that invade our body, that get through actually our barriers. Digestive system, that's probably not the most complicated system in terms of function, but the number of organs that contribute to the digestive system is a super long list. So I can't possibly label them all. I'm just going to do the major players. The mouth, the pharynx, which is the throat, the esophagus, which is the tube that leads to the stomach, the three sections of the small intestine, the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas. Those are all digestive system structures. The large intestine, the rectum, the anus, those are all digestive system structures. Major function is just to break down ingested food and absorption of those nutrients. Nervous system, major organs, brain, spinal cord, peripheral nerves. The major function is to regulate the human body in short-term regulation. The nervous system acts super fast. So most of our short-term regulation, both externally and internally, is regulated by the nervous system. Those nerves, those neural cells, generate and transmit electrical impulses. Those are the major functions of that. Endocrine system. There's major endocrine glands in the human body. The book lists in the brain, the book lists the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. There's also the hypothalamus up there. Then there's the thyroid gland in the neck, the thymus in the chest, the adrenal glands, they sit on top of each kidney. Those are all endocrine structures. The pancreas is also an endocrine structure. You may have heard that I mentioned it in the digestive system. The pancreas is a dual system organ. It functions in digestion as well as endocrine. And finally, the reproductive organs, the testes and the ovaries, male and female. Major function of the endocrine system is to regulate body structures and cells, but generally over a long-term regulation. So it takes a long time for the body to secrete hormones, those hormones to travel throughout the blood, those hormones to find their target, and then some sort of action. So we always think of the nervous system as short-term regulation, really fast, almost immediate. Endocrine system as long-term regulators. Cardiovascular system, heart, arteries, veins, capillaries. Those are the major structures, major functions. The biggest one is transportation. The blood that's in the arteries, veins, and capillaries, the main function of that is to transport nutrients, waste, electrolytes, all sorts of things, hormones. So its major function is transporting things throughout the body. Urinary system, kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, urethra. Those are the major structures. Main function of the of the urinary system is excretion of waste, but particularly the excretion, it rids the body of nitrogenous waste. When our cells break down proteins, they naturally produce, the breakdown of proteins naturally produces waste products called nitrogenous based wastes because they have nitrogen in them. Those can become poisonous to the human body, so our urinary system rids the body of those. Reproductive systems. In the male, it's the testes. Testes is plural, testes with an is is singular. So it's testes, the penis, the ductus deferens, and the prostate. Those are the major structures. Function of that is to produce sperm cells or what we call gametes, Gametes. Gametes is another name for sex cells. So eggs from females and sperm from males are both called gametes. Male gametes are sperm cells, female gametes are oocytes or eggs. In the female reproductive system, they're the mammary glands, the ovaries, the uterus, the uterine tubes, the vagina. Those are all major reproductive structures in the female. The major functions are obviously, just like the system says, it's for reproduction, to perpetuate the species. Otherwise, we would become extinct. So those are the major systems. I do want to explain before we leave, before I cut this off, I will ask you on the first quiz several questions about homeostasis and feedback mechanisms. Okay. Homeostasis is basically the goal, G-O-A-L, the goal of all anatomy and physiology. This is what this word literally defines is keeping an internal stable environment within limits. So it's a word that describes what our bodies are constantly doing 24 hours a day in order to keep a stable internal environment. It's all of the processes that our internal structures are going through in order to stay stable. Feedback mechanisms are the mechanisms of how our bodies maintain homeostasis. So we use feedback mechanisms to maintain homeostasis. You know that we are homeothermic animals. That means our internal body temperatures does not fluctuate very much at all. Well, we've all been alive long enough to know you have a fever from 98.6 up to say 101, 102, you feel awful. But that's only a change of like 3 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's not a huge fluctuation in body temperature, but you know how it makes you feel. So the maintenance of a stable internal body temperature is just one process to maintain overall homeostasis. Now, there's different types of feedback mechanisms. The main gist of feedback mechanisms work like this. Our body has receptors that sense the internal and external environment. They sense changes in the internal and external environment. Those receptors then send a signal to a control center. In humans, think central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Our control center processes the information coming from our receptors, and then the control center sends a signal in response to what the receptors are telling it, sends some sort of a signal command to effectors. This just means organs and glands. That's what that means. That's how our body works to maintain homeostasis. This is a feedback mechanism. There's 2 different types of feedback mechanisms, positive and negative. Those are the 2 categories of feedback mechanism. The vast majority of feedback mechanisms in the human body are negative feedback mechanisms. I'm going to give you some examples. Negative feedback mechanisms are when the signal command sent by the control center opposes the original change that the receptor sensed. I know that sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, but I'll give you an example of a negative feedback mechanism. I'll use the same one that I used earlier. You walk outside today with just shorts and t-shirt on. The surface receptors in your body sense that cold environment. They send signals to your brain that says the environmental temperature has changed dramatically, that something should happen in the body in order to maintain internal body temperature. The brain, the control center, says, okay, we read what you're telling us, cold, and we're going to send a signal, a command, to all of the small muscles in the skin, which are the effectors, and we're going to tell them to contract. That produces shivering. So the command is to make those little muscles in our skin contract, causing shivering. That shivering increases body temp. The reason we call this a negative feedback mechanism is raising body temp is the opposite. It opposes the cold that was first sensed. So cold was the first signal. That signal was sent here. A command was sent out to do something about the cold, and that is shiver to increase body temp. We call that a negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanisms shut themselves off when the body temperature raises enough. The shivering stops. Okay. Now that's the vast majority of feedback mechanisms to maintain homeostasis in the human body work this way. Positive feedback mechanisms are very rare. So I'm going to give you an example of a positive mechanism. Let me go to a new page. Positive would be this. Sensory receptors, they sense a change. They send a signal to the control center, aka the brain, central nervous system. Then a command is sent out to effector organs. But this command does not oppose this initial change, it enhances it. So the command that's sent out to do something at the effector level, we get enhances original sensed change. The two classic examples in the human body of positive feedback mechanisms are childbirth, aka labor contractions in the mother, and hemostasis. Sounds a lot like and looks a lot like homeostasis. This means blood clotting when we are bleeding. So if we get a cut on our skin, the act of our blood clotting to prevent bleeding to death is called hemostasis. These are the two major examples of positive feedback in the human body. I'm going to give you, I'll use the example of child labor. So when the baby descends in the mother's uterus late in the third trimester, the descent of the baby in the mother's uterus stretches the wall of the uterus in a particular area near the cervix, and that sends a signal to the brain. The brain then says, child has descended in the uterus, it's ready to be born, it's ready to go through labor contractions. Then the brain actually releases a hormone, believe it or not, that travels to the uterus. So in this case, the effector organ would be the uterus, and the hormone is the command. The hormone is called oxytocin. Oxytocin is released from the brain. It goes to the muscles in the wall of the uterus and tells them to start to contract. I'm going to write contraction of uterus. The reason we call this now a positive feedback mechanism is as these muscles begin to contract, they continue to send neural impulses to the brain so that the brain releases more and more oxytocin. And it's like a snowball rolling downhill. It enhances, causes more contractions, more intense contractions, which feed back more oxytocin, more contractions. And that continues to occur until the child is finally born. And then the whole system breaks down. The reason it's called positive feedback is because the signal enhances the original signal change. Okay, that explains pretty much all of the feedback mechanisms. I'm going to quit here after I write this term, homeostatic imbalance. When our homeostasis is out of whack, is out of balance, is really when we are sick. So disease causes homeostatic imbalance. So I should write the word disease rather than sick, but we all say, I'm feeling sick. That's usually when our homeostasis is in imbalance. Also, an example is the process of aging also causes homeostatic imbalance. So those two really, disease and aging, cause our homeostasis to deviate from the limits which keep us normally functioning. Before I leave this, I do want you to review this. I don't have time. The last section that I just don't have time to get through today, I'm going to let you go. I do want to write this last thing down. I want you to review anatomical position and directional terms. It's the last section in chapter 1. They're really quite easy. I'll review them very quickly when we meet again on Tuesday. But next Tuesday and Thursday, I really want to focus. I'll try to finish up chapter 1 really quickly, but I really want to focus the next 2 meetings on chapter 4, which is in your textbook. I'm making sure before I say the wrong thing, is tissues. Yep, chapter 4 is tissues. So we'll spend all of next week after we do this talking about tissues. And then, so quiz 1 will cover chapters 1 and 4. Chapter 1 is all of this introductory business that we did today and a little bit next week. And then chapter 4, we're going to focus on next week. That's the more complicated of the 2 chapters. So in preparation for that first quiz, I would spend more of my time on chapter 4 than on chapter 1. I'm not saying that chapter 1 isn't important. What I'm saying is I'll probably create about 60 to 65% of the questions on the first quiz are going to come from chapter 4, probably closer to 35-40% from chapter 1. Okay. All right, guys. Just so you know, I look at my email Monday through Friday, and I try to look at it once in the morning and once late in the afternoon or evening. If you have a question, feel free to email me at any time. If you email me, I'm just saying, if you email me like Friday night or Saturday, most likely I won't receive that email. I won't be able to answer until Sunday night or Monday morning, okay? All right, guys, have a great day. And if you have any issues with the books, the textbooks or the access codes, I'll do my best to help you. But just so you know, I am not an expert at the syncing and linking of these things. Okay, I'll do my best to help you. You have a question? Sure.
Yeah, for the Zoom meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, is it going to be like the same code to get into the Zoom meetings, or will you send it every time?
Unfortunately, no. I wish it was.
Okay.
I'll try to see if I can make it work like that. What I do is, it's a good question. What I usually do is I post, just like I did last night, I post the code the evening before. So you have to log in to get that code. So right now, at least, unless I can find a way to do it the way you're describing, and I haven't been able to do that yet, a new code has to be produced for each meeting, and I post that the day before.
Okay.
So I'll try to work that out. I can't guarantee that I can make it work, but I'll try. So it's just one code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys.
Class meetings are on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 a.m.
Yep, for the rest of the semester. Yep, they're going to be Tuesday, Thursday at 8:30 a.m. I record these meetings. So if you can't make it, I will record them and try to get them posted within 24 hours after having that meeting, okay? And what I mean by, you're welcome. What I mean by posting them is I'll just put a post, a link on the Canvas module that we're currently working in that week. So you can access this meeting at any time, and you can rewatch it. Any other questions?
Right, I wasn't able to get in during the first part of the session. I was having some computer trouble. Just to clarify, we only need the Human Anatomy and Physiology book, either whether it's the online version or the or like the textbook version. Is that correct?
Well, you need that. You need that's called the textbook from Pearson Publishing. You also need the Wiley Next Gen access code in order to complete the online Canvas Wiley Lab exercise. So there's two components to the course. The Pearson textbook is where I go to get all of my lecture quiz questions. And that's frankly what I talk about in these Zoom meetings. Then I assign lab exercises, which are, it's basically just a form of homework. That's through a different publisher called Wiley. And you just click on those exercises. You'll have a full week to complete those. You just click on those exercises that I've assigned in the Canvas module, but you have to have you have to have purchased the Wiley access code in order to get into those exercises. So it's those two things.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, guys. Anybody else? All right. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next Tuesday, okay?
You too. Bye.
You're welcome, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. And say goodbye to Dad.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Let's finish. All right. We're all done. Here, let's turn it on.